Okay, plug that in here. Now we'll get it over from here. We'll find out here. I got the mic. Is it? We have a solid green light. Good. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. Good morning. It's good to see everybody here. We are sparse. Yeah, we have some that traveled late, and so they're resting. We have others that are ill. We have a couple that their work schedules may have them away. So anyhow, yeah, we've got a few gone. We've got a few gone. Camp. They're at camp?
Camp.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know where they are. Anyway, we're looking at a lesson today. The title of the story is the Walls of Jericho, Part 2. It's based because it follows on the heels, real close, of our lesson last week. But a subtitle, if we could have that, I just to help us in our remembering, our ability to recall the 7 C's of penitent victory. That's what we find in chapter 7 of Joshua. And so we're going to be looking at some things that, well, they were given some instruction, great detail, what they were supposed to do regarding the taking of Jericho. And God said, don't take these things, take some of these things. But there was an individual who went into battle, and Achan, I don't know how you would pronounce his name, but anyway, he took some things. And the specifics are in the chapter that we'll look at here in just a minute, but basically what he stole in today's market value would have amounted to over $42,000. Okay, that's basically what he took. The specific sin of coveting and the damage it can cause is well documented in this chapter of Christianity. And the reason I state Christianity is because we, according to Romans chapters 2, 3, and 4, are the children of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Okay? And so Joshua, leading these people now, tell us a story of a sin, a temptation, which can even haunt us today. And we know this to be true, but I think it's good for us to be reminded of that aspect of our history. Coveting isn't the only sin, though, mentioned here. Another sin that can be equally damaging is that of concealing a sin, hiding it. Because what happens when a person does that, it is something that can eat at them from the inside out like a cancer. And so it's very important for us to look at this thing, this story. Because not only do we have this stuff going on in the story, but these 7 C's that we look through, they also describe for us the beginning process, the decline, and then the recovery, leading us to victory. And so we have that redemption, even through all the problem, we have that redemption in this story here. So, In chapter 7, because, there's 26 verses here, we're not going to read all of this at once. We'll look through some of these things as we see them. Anger, the anger of God is mentioned twice. It's mentioned at the very outset of the chapter. It's mentioned at the very end of the chapter. Let's look at verses 1 and verses 26. But the sons of Israel acted unfaithfully in regard to the things under the ban. For Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, from the tribe of Judah, took some of the things under the ban. Therefore, the anger of the Lord burned against the sons of Israel. The first thing we need to keep in mind here about this particular anger is that it has yet to be revealed to the Israelites. God's angry. The Israelites are continuing in their process to take, various cities in the land of Canaan, the promised land that God said is theirs. Okay, in verse 26, look at this text here. And they raised over him a great heap of stones that stands to this day. And the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger. Therefore, the name of that place has been called the Valley of Achor to this day. Okay, so we have God angry at the start, but his anger has been assuaged. It's been moved away. It's been resolved at the end of this. So we have God being angry, but we need to know that God can be turned from his anger. There is, Steve had mentioned in class today, in our covering a text in Proverbs chapter 14, he referred to Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, there's a passage which basically tells us it is useless to focus on the past. It does us no good. If God has resolved an issue, that issue is resolved. Leave it in the past because that's where it belongs. If we continue focusing on the past, all it does is hinder our steps in the here and the now. Okay? That's an idea that we get from this. What kind of anger did God have here? The word is kind of interesting that is used because one of it can literally be translated nostril. So how in the world do you get anger out of a word that can mean nostril? It is an anger that is so heated, fire, like a dragon. It is so heated that it affects your breathing. I was watching this program. There's a medical program I like to watch, and one of the physicians on this team, they were accusing him of having, of getting too angry in situations, and he was telling them, I can be calm. I can do that. And so they were testing him. They hooked him up to a blood pressure, they put the blood pressure cuff, and so they're going through the diagnosis of the particular patient, and they're waiting for him to get his dander up, and so he's very calm, but you watch the machine over here, and you can just see his blood pressure go up. And he finally said, this is malfunctioning. He kind of, got angry, threw the cuff off, and one of the other physicians actually had a little remote. And he was goofing with the blood pressure, So anyway, but they made a valid point. When we get angry, it affects the functions of our body. This is kind of behind the idea of this word that's used here. We anthropomorphize God. God is spirit. So God actually doesn't have a nose. He doesn't have lungs to breathe heavy. There's not going to be an issue with blood pressure. But because of who we are, this word is used to help us understand the degree to which God is angry at this situation. And He has every right to do so. He gave the Israelites specific instructions. And they failed. They failed. Notice this. It was one person who violated the will of God. But to whom is God's anger directed? At the end of verse 1, the anger of the Lord burned against the sons of Israel. Everybody who is involved in that is experiencing the anger of God, or soon will. Soon will. In verses 2 through 5, we have a command that is given to them by Joshua. Joshua says here, that he sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Bethaven, east of Bethel, and said to them, "Go up, spy out the land." So the men went up, spied out Ai. Now, what's going on here is that this city that they're fixing to enter is smaller than Jericho. And so Joshua, knowing the populace of this particular city, comes to the understanding, well, there's no way that they're going to have more than, a certain amount of armed men. And he says, we are not going to have any issue taking this city with just 3,000. Au contraire, as they say in France. Because when they went in there, they got routed. Now it says about 36. How do you get about from a specific number by 36? Well, 36 people were killed. Okay? And it says that the hearts, look at the end of verse 5. The hearts of the people melted and became as water. This description here is the same description that was given to the peoples of the land when they first crossed the River Jordan on dry land. And the people of Canaan land heard about this, and it says their hearts melted. They were in great fear of the people of God. So this should not have happened. In chapter 6, we don't have the word command. And so did God command them to take Jericho in a specific way? Well, the word command wasn't used, so, but we can't mince words here. The word shall is used 5 times in chapter 6. In the word shall in the Hebrew language is seen as a statement of expected observance on the part of the one giving the directive. So when God says, you shall march around this many times, you shall do this as you're marching, you shall not do this, that is a command. Because God, when He said, you shall, He expected them to observe what it was that they were saying. An important phone call. So when God says you shall, what He's really saying here is, you better. So, Joshua, he's thinking, we're not going to have an issue here. Don't let all the people go up, verse 3. Only about 2,000 or 3,000 men need go up. Don't make all the people toil up there, for they're few. And so about 3,000 went up, and again, verse 5 says that they were defeated. So that leads us into the next C. We have consternation, we have command, we have concealment. The idea of concealment here, in verse 1, He was angry. It was concealed at this particular point. And so the sons of Israel, they go in and they experience punishment from God. When you look at the next few verses in 6 through 9, there's bewilderment on the part of the Israelites. We'll get into that in just a minute here. But the sin that was committed by Achan, he concealed this. He's hiding this sin. You'll read later on in chapter 7 where he says they are buried in the dirt in his tent. I mean, he's hiding the objects. He was trying to hide his wrongdoing. But it's not just simple theft here. Because what he stole, the majority of what he stole, okay, the silver and the gold, that was supposed to go into the temple treasury. When Achan stole that, he in fact was robbing the temple, which was sacrilege. That's what he was doing. He was stealing from the church, so to speak. And it was a direct violation of the will of God. He saw, he was tempted in his coveting, and then he acted on that temptation. Turn to James. Go to James chapter 1. In James chapter 1, he shares with us some things that's good for us to be reminded of when it comes to this. First of all, in James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, he says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance." Now, in this case, it's not specifically temptation. This is just a test of faith. What is a test of faith? A test of faith is something that tests our faith. Right? We're supposed to have faith in God. We're supposed to trust God. And there are things that occur that have nothing to do with a moral decision. It's just an aspect of life that tests our faith. Marching around the walls of Jericho, staying quiet, that was a test of faith. Right? He says in verse 3, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And so when they were victorious over Jericho, what that was supposed to do was be that additional power source behind the faith that they would have in conquering other cities. And so that's why when Joshua says, it's a small place, we don't need to worry everybody. No, everybody that went into Jericho is not necessary for victory over this small city. Let's just send a few. So that's what they did. Joshua's faith was bolstered. He expected victory. And we can too. We should. When we're victorious through whatever life throws at us, we should be able to use that energy for future tests of our faith. Let's continue reading. Go down to, verse 12. It says here, "Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial, for once he's been approved, he'll receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." This is the ultimate victory that we are given over those tests of faith that we endure through. But as we continue reading, look at verses 13 through 15. "Let no one say when he's tempted, I'm being tempted by God, for God can't be tempted by evil, and he himself does not tempt anyone. So we can't look at what Achan went through as a test of faith, because God would not have done that to him. Each one is tempted when he's carried away and enticed by his own lust. And so when he saw those items, you know, when years ago, I had a job as a security guard. And in our training, they told us of situations where trucks actually lost large sums of money. On the side of an armored truck, there is a small door. It actually has two doors. They're both keyed. And they're set up that way so that no one from the outside can have access to the inside. And so you go up to the small door, you turn the key, you place the bags of money in there, you shut the door and secure it. The guard on the inside then opens that door with the key, takes it into the more secure area on the inside, then shuts that door again with the key. Well, what happens is the guard on the outside, he turns the key and it doesn't secure all the way. And so truck goes down the road and they make a turn. The force of the turn opens the door. There goes the blue or orange bag full of whatever. One of the stories that we were told, it was like $230,000 or $240,000 that was put in here. To this day, when we travel, I still will look on the sides of roads for blue and orange bags. Anyway, the thing is that if you run across that, you'd be tempted. Oh, man. $230,000 would revealing too much here. Anyway, Sherry and I would be completely debt-free. Pay off our mortgage, pay off our vehicle loan. Anyway, okay, so strong temptation there, right? But if I find money in a blue or orange bag, because of my training, I already know it's not mine. Someone would say, oh, but you can still take it. No, you can't. That money is tracked. And it doesn't matter if it's tracked or not. I still know it's not mine. Achan knew that. He saw that. The battle of Jericho is raging. It is going on. He finds this. What was he supposed to do? Throw it in his saddlebag or whatever. You know, at the end of the battle, when they're going through everything, here's this. That's not even the biggest problem, though, because he took a coat. He took a mantle from Shinar, and my studies tell me that it is a Babylonish, ornamental cloak. And so I'm just kind of doing some research, and there's some websites that'll sell some ornamental cloaks, for $100. I found one website that had one for a little over $4,000. It was 200-300 years old, and it was hand stitched and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, that was supposed to have been destroyed because that was not going into the temple treasury. Why? Because God said. So we have that concealment going on and that testing. And so there's a commitment that that has to take place. And in verses 2 through 5 of our chapter in Joshua, they're hindered. The Israeli army is supposed to be an invincible force with God on their side. This is why Joshua tears his clothes. He falls to the earth in verse 6. Before the ark of the Lord until evening. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 24, it says, the thing feared by the evildoer will come to him, but the upright man will get his desire. They were routed even in their commitment, because their commitment was not established on righteousness. There's commitment that was hindered. There's also commitment that can be heeded. First John chapter 3, verses 21 and 22, it says, beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we have confidence before God, and whatever we ask, we'll receive from Him because we keep His commandments and do the things that are pleasing in His sight. That's how we're victorious in these kinds of battles, whatever, that we have to endure, the testing of our faith, right? If we're trusting God and doing what we ought to be doing, then God's going to be taking care of us and answering our prayers. That's what we're promised in 1 John chapter 3. Romans chapter 8, verse 31, if God be for us, who can stand against us? Joshua was trusting that. But there was something going on that Joshua just didn't know. And so in verses 6 through 9, he has that complaint in the form of a prayer. Alas, O Lord God, verse 7, why did you ever bring this people over the Jordan only to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? What's the point, he says? If this is what you're going to do, what's the point? If only we'd been willing to dwell beyond the Jordan. Lord, what can I say since Israel has turned their back before their enemies? They ran away, didn't they? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and they will surround us and cut us off from the face of the earth. And what will you do for thy great name? Yeah. That's a prayer. Do you pray like that? God, I got a complaint. Is it right for us to complain to God? I think there's some passages that talk about that. But I think what God really wants from us in our prayer is an honest and open heart. That's what we see in Joshua here. It's just an honest and open heart. God will converse within those parameters. And I think that's important for us to know. And so there's a process of consecration that is seen in the next few verses that God says you have to go through. We're going to find here that consecration, the process of it, is sometimes not easy because there are some things that just have to be removed. Jesus said, if your right eye offends you, pluck it out. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus is actually saying go in the kitchen, get a spoon, and dig that bugger out, but he's saying you go to great lengths to remove something from you that shouldn't be there. That's what you do. If there's a temptation over here that constantly hounds you, stop going over here. right? Go over here. If you're able to remove whatever it is over here because it just happens to be someplace that you constantly have to travel through or by, get rid of it. Move it. Throw it in the trash. Whatever you got to do. That's kind of what he's saying here. And so when you look at verses 10 through 15, the ramifications of this process, they involve community, they involve family, and they involve self. Let's read with me. Rise up. Why is it you've fallen on your face? God says to Joshua. Israel sinned. They've transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them. Oh, wait, we didn't find the word command in chapter 6, did we? We only found the word shall. Well, we know what that word means, but God did say, and He clarified the word shall that I used a number of times there. It was a command. It's plain and simple. They've taken some of the things under the ban and have both stolen and deceived. Moreover, they've also put them among their own things. Folks, this is why God said in certain situations, in the case of Jericho, in the case of Ai, in the case of other cities that Israel's supposed to go in to conquer, Israel and the rest of the world will suffer as a result of them not doing what He said to do. There are peoples in this world who have been evil, they were evil, and they'll continue to be evil because they don't care what God says. They don't care about the Son of God who came and gave His life on Calvary that others could live. They don't care about loving in the way that Jesus described in John chapter 13. They just simply don't care, they won't care, and they are going to continue to hound people till God finally puts an end to it, however God puts an end to it. Verse 13, God says to him, rise up, consecrate the people, and say, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow. Thus the Lord, the God of Israel, has said, there are things under the ban in your midst, O Israel. You cannot stand before your enemies until you have removed the things under the ban from your midst. He says, you're going to come before Him by tribes. And you know, the tribes, and this tribe is going to be picked, and that family is going to be picked, and this individual is going to be chosen. And think about this process. God said it was the sons of Israel that sinned, verse 1. As Joshua was telling all the Israelites, consecrate yourself, because this is what's going on. Think, you don't know what's going on. You have no idea. You're fixing to learn why y'all weren't victorious in taking this city, why 36 people died needlessly. And so you're thinking, was it one of my kinsmen? I've already lost, so-and-so in that battle. Cain and Abel, Molech was a god that even the Israelites were guilty of sacrificing their children to. Families suffer as a result of sin. David lost a child because he killed a man because he coveted this guy's wife. She gets pregnant, she has a baby, and that child dies. Even through all the prayer, all of the fasting, that David did to try and save that child to appease God. Families suffer. And then, of course, self. The Bible's full of people who suffered at various degrees, in various situations, because they themselves did wrong. From Achan to Saul to David to Balaam, Judas. You know, the list is very long there. Consecration is not easy. Then you have, though, confession. And in verses 16 and following, basically what transpires here is seen in verse 20. Because the families come forth, Achan's family is chosen, and of course Achan, he stands there and he says this, "Truly, I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel, and this is what I did. When I saw among the spoil a beautiful mantle of Shinar, 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them, I took them, I concealed them." He admitted his guilt. He was specific in what he did. And, you know, that can be important. That can be important. There's a fellow by the name of Abbot Serapion, and he's telling of some hurt that he experienced personally, or maybe it's a story that he's telling, but anyway, and he lived about, 300 or so years ago, but anyway, this fella, he says, I used to go and sit with an old man, and I would steal a biscuit and hide it in my robe. And then he would, later on, and he says, eat it on the sly. You know? And he did this a few times, and then his guilt started to overwhelm him. And it got to the point where he couldn't deal with the guilt anymore. And so he went to the old man and he told him what he had been doing. And the old man, he said, "Your confession frees you." Confession sets us free. Achan may have, there's nothing in the text that tells us one way or the other. Achan may have, because of his admittance, been redeemed from eternal punishment. But he did not escape the consequence of his actions. That's not a bad thing for us to remember. Ai was a relatively small place in comparison to Jericho, you know, and we need to remember that without God, even the smallest problem that comes before us will kick us where it hurts the most. We need to adhere to God and submit to Him and then confess if we do wrong. Achan, who brought such calamity upon Israel, is from the tribe of Judah. What I find interesting about this is that here's a story of somebody who lost his life because of sin from the very same tribe from which Jesus came, who gave his life because of sin. Sin is damaging. It causes us to live away from God. So basically today, if you're living away from God and you're making decisions that are contrary to His will, you know that you can change. Confess it, be specific. If it's something that you feel you need the support of from the rest of us in this auditorium, then amen. We're here to support, to comfort, to love, to inspire, and whatever else help we might be able to give to you. If it's a process that you're going to do in another manner, well, I'll encourage you to do that too. Whatever it takes to get closer to God. Amen? If there's any way that we can help, let us know while we stand and sing.
What can wash
away my sin?